recap, we've been going through a series on following Jesus. My idea of what that means is that through the Gospels, we find a lot of times that Jesus gave this invitation. There's other times that people came and said, "We would like to follow you." My claim is that this is what Jesus gives us as the answer for what is needed in life. That when we ask Jesus, what does a good life look like? He says a good life is one where we follow him, where we take on his idea of what it means to be going somewhere, what is worth living for. And this is never a quick answer. If someone doesn't answer the quick question of what should I do, but says, "You know what, come follow me and I'll show you," you know that it's not a quick one-sentence answer you're going to get. It's going to take some time. So quick homework check. Again, this is not meant to be a guilt check, but last week we had a challenge on praying, what's holding me back from following? What are the things that seem to just get me stuck? And asking God to show those to us and ask God, what is it that makes me cling to that instead of letting go? How did it go this week? Usually that's a bit of a dangerous request to make, because if we make it and we actually seek God, the best that we can get on that is he'll say, "This is in your life that's not helpful." And our response would typically be, "But I like that. I don't want to change that." But part of that becomes that following is for us an opportunity to actually make our lives look a little bit more like Jesus. So as we continue with this theme, a couple of questions. Do you have any questions that pop up in your mind when someone asks you to follow them? I kind of think you should, but is there anything that would spring up? Here are some suggestions. Where are you going? It's a good idea to know that if you're following someone. Do I know you? Someone randomly showed up and said, "Hey, follow me," and you had no idea who they were. Would you follow them, and would that be a wise idea? Do I trust you? What do I need to bring? How will we get there? How long will it take? I think these are good questions, especially if you want to finish the trip. If someone asks you to follow them, but they won't give you any of these answers, it kind of increases the likelihood that we will not finish the trip with them, that we would kind of get frustrated once we had no idea where we were going, we had no idea why we were going. We would probably start to give up a little bit on that. Part of my goal in going through these follow me passages is I think that Jesus has good answers to these. I don't think that Jesus hides and refuses to answer. I think that as we go through the Gospels and look at what Jesus says about following him, we find a compelling reason of why we should follow. We see something that is worth pursuing. And I think Jesus gives good answers to the questions that people have if we're willing to read and look for them. So today I want to look at another passage of Jesus interacting with people. These are two men who come to him and say that they want to follow him this time. But we're going to look at a little bit more, a little passage in Matthew 8, reading from Matthew 8, verses 12 to 24. If you want to turn there, take a look at it, follow along. This is Matthew 8, starting at verse 12. Verse 14, sorry. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law laying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her. She got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and drove out the spirits with the word, and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities, and he bore our diseases. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Father, we give you thanks that we have heard a call to follow, that as we have received this invitation, that we look to you for what it means to know where we are going, how we are going to get there. As we take a look at what Jesus offers, what he speaks about, who he is, about how he is the one who will lead us to who you are. We just ask that we would have the eyes to see it. That as we see a path laid out before us, that we would have the courage to follow it. As we hear your voice, that we would know of what you ask of us. We would know what you call us to. So Father, as we look at this, we just ask that the meditation of all of our hearts and the words of my mouth would be pleasing and acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So in this passage, the reason why I did that first part of Peter's mother-in-law is Jesus attracts big crowds. Jesus always had a lot of people who came to see him. I think there's a lot of reasons that people would come to see Jesus. One is if you were sick, you would be showing up to Jesus. Another one would just be the curiosity of hearing about what was going on, I think would be enough to draw large crowds. And for others, just the idea of, well, who is he? What does it mean that he's doing these things? Anytime there's something new that tends to increase our curiosity, and it increases us a desire to go out and see. And this is true for Jesus. He always has big crowds following him. But there's a difference between a curiosity in someone and a passionate pursuit of someone. As you see these two men who come up, they've joined this crowd that followed Jesus to a place, but they come up and say, no, we're going to follow you. So there's a difference between, well, I showed up to something, and what it means for these people to follow. We'll take a quick look at both of these guys. The first guy, it says a teacher of the law, comes to Jesus and says, I'm going to follow you anywhere. And Jesus' response is awesome. Instead, it's a bit of an odd statement of, foxes will have their dens and birds have a nest, but I don't have a pillow. I don't have anywhere to put my head down. And a bit of an odd response, I think. But as we take a look at what does it mean to be a teacher of the law? This is, to be a teacher, this would be someone who is part of the academy, someone who spends a lot of time with their nose in books. And someone who has a lot of time to spend their nose in books is someone who has had a lot of resources to get them there. If you're scraping by to, put bread on the table, you're not going to spend a lot of time reading books. Spending a lot of time in the law was kind of a luxury. It was part of, I have the privilege to be able to do this. This is a man who is used to status and he is used to comfort. So Jesus is telling him, and it's interesting to me, that he doesn't actually say no to him, but he gives him the warning that I don't stay in the nicest places. My message is not one of read more of the scripture. It's telling one to us. My message is not one of prestige and my own comfort. But what I am called to is often going to be where I end up. And quite often that just means camping. This is, for this man, a bit of a challenge of you're going to be giving some things up to follow me. It's going to be a change for you. And again, Jesus doesn't say, no, you can't. But he challenges him on, what do you think it means to follow me? Do you think that everything will be the same? Do you think that you just have to change some interpretations that you have, that you have to agree with my ideas? Or do you actually mean you're going to come, you're going to sit with me and be a reflection of me? The second man is just no statement about who he is. He comes and he makes what we consider a pretty reasonable request. Let me bury my father first, then I will follow you. Now, my first thought on this is if the guy's dad is already dead, maybe he should have buried him first and then come and told Jesus that he wants to bury his dad and then follow him. I don't understand this guy's priorities when burial was not a long-winded thing. Why didn't he do that first before coming and offering? The more complicated answer is that this guy's dad wasn't actually dead yet. What he was saying was, my dad is older. Let me wait until he passes away. And once all of that's done, then I'm interested. Then I'll come and follow you. And Jesus says, let the dead bury their own dead. Which, at first glance, can seem a bit harsh. I mean, shouldn't we take care of our dads? Shouldn't we want to be present with those who are there? But I think the trouble with this is that the plan here is, well, Jesus, I'll come when I'm not busy. I'll come when, the time opens up. I'll come when it's convenient and available to me. And if Jesus just said, okay, that sounds good, the reality is, how many of us are waiting for the time that, I'll have all kinds of time in the next couple of weeks. Next year, I'm going to just be free time galore. I'm busy now, but coming up, I'm not going to be busy. I never hear it. I never hear from many people who say, I don't have anything going on, nothing exciting in my life, there's no requirements, nothing pressing. There's always something that presses on us. And when we tell Jesus, you know what, I have something else, let me finish that first, just wait until I'm not busy, Jesus, is a way of saying, I'm going to die one day, and then can we hang out? Jesus gives the warning that if you have something else there, if you have some busyness in your life, you're always going to have that excuse. So come and follow. Practical aspects of this. I don't think Jesus is looking for us to actually walk around with him right now. If you've seen him, I would love to know. We could go try walking around with him, but this is not a request for us to change location. This is not a request for us to necessarily change job. There's not a big shift that's going to happen externally when we hear the call to follow Jesus. And what these two men came and they said, all right, we're willing to make these changes, but only if. And Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you have to give up on some of those ifs. But instead of some big outside change, that if I was to take the call to follow Jesus, doesn't mean I'm moving to a different town, doesn't mean I'm taking a new job, doesn't mean I'm giving up on my family, but it means I'm going to start ordering my life in a new way. To follow him not just in his example of where he's actually stepping, but his example of what it looks like to actually know where I'm going and to know how to get there. Jesus' offer is not, your life now is bad and you need a different, better one, and I'll give it to you. But Jesus' offer is you are of raw potential material, that you have so much that you can be, and he wants to help us to make us into that. It's a big difference to say you're broken and I need to fix you, and to say I want to help you get to where you are meant to go. And I think quite often our message of Jesus is to say, you're broken and Jesus will fix you and then you'll be fine. And then when people say, oh yeah, I'd love that. I would love it if what was broken in my life could be put together. And they say, well, now I'm fixed, but I still feel broken. I still don't know where I'm supposed to be going or what I'm supposed to be doing. But instead, when we follow Jesus and understand that that means him saying, walk with me and I will help develop you into who you are meant to be, means that we're never actually done. Means that following isn't a short gap, that Jesus is not just calling us across the room. He's calling us into a life of genuine following. That means that we will be one day wrong and the next day still wrong. A couple of quick examples. This one I'm pretty sure will be of shock and awe to all of you. I own a bathroom scale. You're impressed, right? I'm going to give two very practical examples, just so that you know. I own a bathroom scale. If these help, that's great. If these don't help, or these just seem completely nonsense to you, you can throw the examples away. But I felt like these were helpful in trying to understand them. I understand that you're probably not that impressed by my claim to own this bathroom scale, and it's not that special of one. What it does is if I step on it, it says error. But if I step on it the right way, it will tell me how much I weigh. And again, that's pretty commonplace for a scale. My confession with this scale is that the first time that I had stepped on it in a month and a half was yesterday, and because I felt like, well, I have to now. See, in December, I get ready for Christmas by pretending I don't have a scale, because I really don't want a scale in my life at that time, because I really don't want it messing up Christmas, because for me, Christmas is actually a lot of chocolate. To me, it's the time that you cut loose on a lot of those. But Christmas ended a little while ago, I noticed. And I still would see this every day in my bathroom. And I think, no, not yet. I still want to eat that chocolate. I don't want something telling me, no, maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe, it's 9 o'clock. Maybe you don't need to eat a little bit more. But you know what, scale? I'll pretend you're not there, and I'm going back to the kitchen. And as I was preparing this, I was thinking of a scale doesn't do much, but it gives you a number. And my fear of stepping on my scale was one for the judgment that was going to come with it. Because I knew that when I stepped on the scale, it was not going to be the same number that it was in the early December. I knew it was not going to be good news that I got from this scale. It was not going to be something that I particularly enjoyed. And the challenge that my scale was going to issue was, are you going to keep going, or are you going to make some change? Are you going to make a shift in your habits? And my avoidance of the scale was essentially me saying, I really don't want to change any of those habits, and I don't want to be stepping on a scale and feeling condemned by what it says every day, so I'm going to ignore it. So yesterday I stepped on my scale for the first time, and as my practice is, I actually have a fairly well-worn practice of when I make up with my scale after a long period of having broken up, is I went and I wrote down the date and I wrote down what the weight was. And I set up my own little calendar where I can take the scale and I can interpret what it tells me on a daily basis. Because the weight on there, it's only part of the story. It's only so much of what's going to help. But what's really going to make a change in my life is not stepping on the scale every day, but it's the practices that it induces. For me, that's part of an awareness of, I probably need to lose some weight. I need to watch what I'm eating a bit more. I probably need to start exercising. I probably need to watch when I am eating as well as what is going on. I have a whole list of healthy habits that I know and I have established before, but when I'm not actually practicing them, they're completely meaningless. And if I take a look at my long list of good habits that I have been in before, it's overwhelming because I can't start them the next day. I have to rebuild into them. So my bathroom scale, to me, just offers a reckoning. It doesn't actually say this is what you need to do, this is who you need to be, this is what, it just tells me this is what is. This is where you are, and where are you going to go? And what is going to lead you in the directions that you want to? Fortunately, in the matters of trying to be more healthy, I don't have to make that all up. I've walked bits of it before, and I've had other people walk before me and what that looked like as well. A second illustration. If I were to ask you, how long does it take to run a marathon? The world's fastest man just did it while the world's fastest marathon was now just under 2 hours. So if I need to run a marathon, I need to block off about, I'm not the world's fastest man, so 2 hours and 15 minutes, right? That's all I need. It's a bit of a trick question. Honest answer is I couldn't run a marathon right now. It's not physically possible for me to get that many miles out of my body. But it is physically possible for a human to run a marathon. So how long does it take to run a marathon? The answers that I came up with was it's about 6 months. 6 months that you need to train your body on what it means for it to run 26 miles. And that doesn't mean that, well, I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months, so today I'm going to run 1 mile, then I'm going to run 2, then I'm going to run 3. We have to build our bodies up into being able to work into that. One step, one day, 1 week at a time. And if I was saying, well, I want to run a marathon, so I'm going to just do random exercises. I'm going to do some push-ups today, and tomorrow I'm going to do some jumping jacks, and I'll run on Wednesday, but you know what, I don't like running that much, so I'm going to use my exercise bike on Thursday. I'm going to have a break day on Friday. I'll get to the marathon, and I'm not going to get very far, because there was no purpose to what I was training for. There was no rhyme or reason to what was going on, and I haven't actually trained myself for what I needed to do. It's important to know what needs to be strengthened, what needs to be challenged, what do I need to do, and what are my milestones through those 6 months of what is actually preparing me for how far I want to run. Thankfully, I'm not the first person who would be running a marathon. Actually, the first guy who ran a marathon in ancient Greece went to announce that his army had won an important victory, and he didn't train for it. He ran the marathon, and then he dropped dead. So, not ideal. I don't think that's what you want to do at the end of it. But there are other people who have run marathons, and there are people who will train you and tell you this is how you build yourself into a marathon. This is how you build yourself up to what needs to be done. A marathon is the result of following a design and understanding who I need to be in order to run one. And I think, again, these two, if these are completely unhelpful, I'm sorry about the last 5 minutes of your time, but I think these give us an idea of what it means to follow Jesus. Jesus will give us an honest reckoning of where we are. Sometimes we really don't want to hear that because we don't want to have to mess with our lives. What if Jesus says, have you looked at how much time is screen time? Have you looked at how much goes into that? Have you considered taking some time for this? And we say, well, but Jesus, I'm so busy. I have so many things to do, I can't add you on. But don't pretend that we want to follow. Jesus doesn't ask us to add him on. He offers to be a reorganization of what's there. If I want to be healthier because of stepping on the scale, I have to change my patterns of living. If I want to get towards running a marathon, I have to build myself up to it. I have to dedicate myself that that is a goal, and I have to have something that I follow that is going to lead me there. Following Jesus is not about a destination. I think it's about how we walk to get there. It's daily practices that prepare us and form us into who God sees in us. And in it, it's a blessing that God will work with us into shaping us into who we are becoming. God doesn't say, I think you have potential, but I don't want you to touch any of your life anymore. That would be like a parent who never let their child grow up. No, you can't pour your own cereal. You can't pour your own milk because you'll just make a mess. At some point, as a parent, you have to let your kids step into that. No, you can't ride a bike because you might crash, so I'm going to hold you the whole time. They'll never take the next step of that. And kids who are chronically stopped from living their lives don't know how to adjust when their parents aren't there. And inevitably, your parents won't be there. God's good gift to us is not that he says, I'm going to coddle you, I'm going to make sure that you're always safe. But he says, I want you to be able to live full life. And just like for a child growing up, there's cuts, there's bruises, and there's pains that come along the way with that. I just think that this guy's name is amazing to try to pronounce. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. What saves a man is to take a step, then take another step. It's always the same step, but you have to take it. The emphasis being, you have to take the steps. If you want to walk a marathon, you're going to have to put one foot in front of the other. Nobody can make your legs do that. Nobody can force you into being who you need to be. Following Jesus is not about him saying, this is who you have to be. It's his offer of saying, this is what I want to make you into. This is what I want to lead you in. And through the entirety of the Gospels, I'm fairly convinced of this. What Jesus answers through there is, where is he going? He calls it the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, where God's will is done in the same way on heaven as it is on earth. How are we going to get there? He offers us in the Sermon on the Mount that he says, well, it's going to reshape your heart. You're going to love people differently. Not just the people who love you, not because they love you, you're going to love your enemies. You're going to care for people as they hate you, and you're going to find new ways to pour out goodness on people, even if they pour out cruelty on you. You're going to be people of peace. You're going to be people who live by the fruit of the Spirit, that your life will be defined by love, joy, peace, patience, self-control. That these things will be made manifest in you, and then when you arrive at the kingdom of heaven, when we arrive to God, we find ourselves fit to live there. Nothing's worse than saying, I'm going to run a marathon, and not planning for it, not preparing for it, and showing up at the start line realizing we're completely unsuited and unfit to run it. To get there and realize, I can't do this. I don't even want to do this. I hate this. Another thing with the running, for running a marathon. If you're anything like me, running is not my favorite activity. But a funny thing happens when you start to run. You'll run for the first few days out of duty, and then you'll run a few days and you'll hate it. But then you'll find, after a few weeks, you start to look forward to the run. you start to enjoy the run. You start to find freedom in it. You notice other things about the side effects of what it means for you to run, that your body is becoming healthier, you're able to function better. Your sleep actually counts for more when you run. Your body processes things in a different way. Your brain functions differently when you are exercising. And you could long for all of these good things, and I want to be healthy, I want my brain to work good, I want to sleep well, I want. This is what it takes. I don't want to do that. Can I have something else? Jesus says, when you follow me, these other things come into line. When you come with me, I will give you all of these good things. But don't be distracted by the side of what's there. The main thing is following Jesus. Another bit of homework. This one is slightly different. Sometime this week, I think I wrote this on the back of your handy dandy to help. Reflect on this. What am I using my daily life to train for? Is there a reason that your daily life happens? Or is it just to get to the end of the day? I think one of the saddest things that we can do is to say that I use my daily life to get to the end of the day. I just want to finish the day. I just want to finish today. Because what you're training yourself for is the end of your life. To say, I just want to finish this. I just want this to end. I just want this to end. That is not human flourishing. That is not the image that Jesus gives us of what good life is. And as hard as it is to make a change, as hard as it can be to step on a scale and get an honest reckoning of where we're at, as hard as it can be to define ourselves differently, it's ultimately worthwhile. Let's pray. Father, I give you thanks that you speak honestly to our lives, that you give us an image of what it means to follow, that you give us a purpose of where you are going, that you tell us who you want to define us into. You tell us the cost. You tell us the way to get there. You tell us that you will be with us on every step of where we're going. That through all of that, you would never leave us. You would never forsake us. That there is nothing on earth that would remove us from what you desire for us. There's nothing that would take you off of the path with us unless we chose not to walk it. So, Father, may we catch vision of what you are offering. We just ask that this week that you would give us the challenge, that you would give us what we need to take a first step to say, yeah, something needs to change. Yeah, I want that. And I'm going to pursue it. Father, may we be a people that encourages one another in the pursuit of who you are. Not puts up barriers, not makes it harder, but may we be a people of your liberty, of the freedom that you give to us, of the uniqueness of calling, that we would encourage one another, that we would strive to bring others with us as we follow, as we pursue you. Kind of got stuck there, and I guess amen. Call up is there a music team still there?